Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. As a result of closed shopping malls and limited trading, Polish retail sales remain at the level of May this year. According to analysts, Poland will face a serious economic crisis as the Polish economy hasn't been in such a bad condition for a long time.
According to the latest report from the Central Statistical Office, in Poland, the petrochemical industry is facing its most severe crisis ever. Last month, the sale of liquid fuels decreased by 13.5%. Car sales dropped by 8% compared to the previous year. When it comes to the food sector, the sale of food products decreased by 2%. However, there is some positive news regarding the electronics industry. The consumption of electronics in Poland has increased by nearly 12%, as Poles are still willing to spend their money on household appliances and electronics.
The nationwide women's strike is still continuing throughout the country. According to many political commentators, protesters claim to be the defenders of women's rights, but in reality, they want to decide who lives and who dies. They are trying to stir up people, and they want to bring anarchy.
The activists of the women's strike demand equal treatment. However, they are introducing divisions themselves. Press conferences are for journalists. If ladies and gentlemen from the Law and Justice Party arrive, either employed in the police or prosecution, pretending to be journalists, they can share the information they gathered. They have the same database. Ladies pretending to be journalists can ask the police for footage of us. Last week, during the massive protests in the streets of Warsaw, Marta Lempart refused to answer questions from TV Republika reporters. Our reporter was also not let in to the press conference of the strike. Actions against journalists, throwing them out of press conferences, are illegal in Poland. Let me remind you that Article 44 of press law states that preventing journalists from doing their work is punishable by up to 3 years in prison or a fine. In my opinion, the prosecution should take on the case of Marta Lempart and other activists. The spiral of hatred keeps turning. I saw videos myself showing Mrs. Lempart preparing a group of protesters to attack the police. She directly encouraged people to clash with law enforcement, all under the pretext of peaceful protests.
Z policją, wszystko oczywiście pod hasłem swobody demonstrowania.
Organizers of the strike, all institutions of public life, if they want to take part in public life, then they should follow the rule of equal access for the media, access to press conferences and announcements. Meanwhile, the Ombudsman refuses to take a stand on this matter. The officials of Adam Bodnar see no problem in this. When there are disagreements between non-government bodies, for instance the women's strike, the Ombudsman is not an institution which can intervene. In turn, the Ombudsman is quick to take a stance in the media as the defender of the allegedly repressed people.
And now let's take a look at the latest report from the Polish Ministry of Health. The Sanitary Inspectorate has reported a decrease in the number of new COVID-19 infections throughout the country.
The Polish Ministry of Health has reported 15,000 new coronavirus infections in the country, which means that the number of new infections has decreased compared to the previous weeks. The total number of COVID-19 infections reported in the country from the beginning of the epidemic has now risen to 876,333. 156 more people have died of coronavirus and coexisting diseases in Poland. The total number of deaths has reached almost 14,000.
More and more biotechnology companies are trying to find a vaccine to deal with the spreading coronavirus pandemic. Apart from American and German companies, a vaccine developed by a British company in Oxford University is also showing great promise in the fight against COVID-19.
AstraZeneca, the British-Swedish company, has announced that its coronavirus vaccine is 90% effective. This will be the next product after the vaccine prepared by Pfizer, the American company, which gives hope for a faster end to the pandemic. According to the representatives of the company, no disturbing side effects of the vaccine were detected during the clinical trials, which means that none of the vaccinated patients suffered a severe coronavirus infection that would require hospitalization. The effectiveness of the vaccine was assessed on the basis of the preliminary results of Phase 3 of the clinical trials conducted in Brazil and the United Kingdom on over 23,000 volunteers, including only 131 who became infected. The study has shown that the vaccine is 90% effective, which is a slightly lower result than the one obtained by the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccines, which reported to be up to 90% effective. The head of the vaccine research team, Professor Andrew Pollard, said that the vaccine is more effective when applied in a smaller dose, which means that it will be available to more people. In addition, the vaccine developed by AstraZeneca does not pose any problems in terms of storage and transport. The optimal temperature at which it should be stored is between 2 and 8 degrees. For comparison, the vaccine developed by the Pfizer company requires transport at minus 80 degrees Celsius, which is currently one of the biggest obstacles to its effective distribution. The Minister of Health of the United Kingdom, Matt Hancock, has announced that the British government has purchased over 1 million doses of the vaccine.
The situation in Belarus is becoming more difficult as greater numbers of people take to the streets to protest against the falsified election results and the authoritarian government of Alexander Lukashenko. The police have arrested over 200 people.
Protests took place in many Belarusian cities. The largest number of people participated in the protests held in Minsk. This time, instead of one demonstration organized in the city center, protesters spread into smaller groups. Many participants were holding the white, red, white flags, which are the symbol of an independent Belarus. Even though the protesters decided to spread out, the police restricted their movements. According to the Belarusian Ministry of Interior, during yesterday's protests, the participants clashed with the police, which used tear gas against them. According to Svoboda Radio, 6 people were hospitalized as a result of yesterday's clashes with the police. The police arrested over 200 people. According to the Belarusian opposition, over 30,000 people have so far been arrested during anti-government protests.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programs. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.